Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pestana. And we're here today with special guest, Kevin Griffin. And he's here to share with us his new book, Living Kindness, Metta Practice for the Whole of Our Lives. Now, are you looking to develop a life of kindness, self-compassion, and selflessness? Well, today we're going to explore that with Kevin. So Kevin Griffin is a leader in the mindful recovery movement and a community Dharma leader at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. He's the author of multiple books, including the best-selling Buddhist recovery book, One Breath at a Time, and he's studied with leading insight meditation teachers. So let's welcome to the show, Kevin Griffin.
Thanks, Marianne. It's great to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your new book. So living kindness, that just grabbed me right away. So what is that?
Well, I'm glad it grabbed you because the most important thing with the book is the title. I always tell everyone it's the hardest thing to find, but it really was almost the impetus for the book was to take this word that's become more popularized. I know it's very well known in the Buddhist world, but I think becoming more broadly popular, the phrase loving kindness. And this is a traditional meditation practice, which has been expanded on a great deal over the centuries, really, and in the last couple decades. But living kindness was a suggestion that it was more than just a meditation practice, and that indeed it's more than just a feeling or kind of acting nice, but that it had to really permeate our whole lives. And that for me is both a challenge and a relief. Certainly, it's a challenge to try to be, live with kindness all the time. But it's also a reminder that I also already do that in a lot of ways. So I think, many times people kind of learn about the loving kindness practice and they start judging themselves. Oh, I'm not really loving enough, or I don't love everybody enough, or I don't love myself. And to see maybe all the ways that you are already, a good person, a helpful person, a generous person, a kind person, and ways that you take care of yourself. So I've kind of redefined the word love as simply care. So I could have called it living care or something. But anyway, living kindness it is.
Well, and then you talk about metta practice. So
Yeah.
why don't you break that down for us? So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, metta. So we put this in the subtitle, and that's really for the Buddhists in the crowd, because metta is a Buddhist word that's typically translated as loving kindness, but it's sort of an odd. I think the phrase loving kindness is sort of an odd word because if you're loving, why do you have to say anything about kindness? But then we realize that we use the word love in a lot of different ways that aren't about being kind, that are more about liking things or passion or even sexual feelings. But love, metta as a practice is done in a very structured way in which we typically repeat phrases to ourselves like, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be safe. So we start with ourself and saying these words to ourselves. And then we start to think about others, people that we love, people that are close to us. And then we go in through different categories. We try to work with people that they're called neutral people. So it could be like a neighbor that you don't have a relationship with, you don't feel anything about them, but you try to arouse feelings of love for them, and you send out, in a sense, that with those phrases, those kind of wishes for them. May you be happy, peaceful, safe. And then finally, you work with the difficult person, sometimes called the enemy in the traditional texts, which is where it really becomes challenging. And that's one of the places where people wind up struggling, I will say, to some extent. But I think it's just also revealing to think about people that you don't like, or people that you're afraid of, or public figures that annoy you in some way, and think about them and notice what they do to you when you think of them, what that does to you internally. It's not that you're going to change your relationship to them necessarily externally, but can you free yourself of that hatred or the anger or the resentment or the jealousy? Because ultimately, we see when we start to do this practice that it's my inner life that's really key here. I'm not, even if it's a political figure, I'm never going to really interact with them. But if I'm angry with them all the time, I'm creating suffering for myself. So this is a really fundamental Buddhist principle, is how we create our own suffering and how we can end our own suffering. So one of the ways then is around anger. So this is a really interesting stage of the practice. And so we've got these initial stages of self, loved ones, neutral ones, difficult ones. And then we do a practice called radiating, which I actually, that's my favorite part, where we just sort of imagine that loving kindness or feelings of care or appreciation or compassion are just radiating out of our body, out of our mind, out of our heart, and spreading. And I do it kind of geographically. I sort of see my neighborhood, and then, the city and the state, and then across the country, and then around the world. And then you can radiate out into the universe. And that's a really lovely way of, first of all, just connecting with something visceral, something that feels very rich for you, to make your mind very spacious. That we think of our mind sometimes as just our head. And when you can sort of imagine in this way and radiate in this way, it creates a kind of lightness and openness in the mind. But it's also then, again, what we would call an insight practice, in the same way that seeing the anger within ourselves is an insight practice. So the insight practice here with the radiating is seeing that I'm actually connected to all these beings and to this earth itself, and that there isn't a separation, that the sense of separation is artificial. It's something we create in our minds. And this, again, is a very lovely way to view the world and view our relationship to the world, to see that we're even though we have this individual life, we also have this life that's part of this much greater and more vast world and reality.
Do people kind of get hung up on the point where they're being able to radiate because maybe they need to love themselves, and it's like, gosh, I can't even get there. I think about all the things I did in the past. Maybe yesterday I wasn't so loving. Is there a point where
Yeah,
people kind of get hung up?
absolutely. And you've kind of pinpointed it, although I was kind of pointing to the working with the difficult person as a challenging point. As you suggest, the starting of giving love to yourself tends to, stop people oftentimes. And it's essentially, I think it's partly a misunderstanding. Essentially, maybe more fully a misunderstanding of what it means, at least in this tradition, in this practice, to love yourself. It doesn't mean that we have to be a good person or earn love, that we are kind of comparing ourselves, or rating ourselves. Not all of that is really put aside. It's much more simple. It's much more about, I am a living being, if you prefer a human being, but just a living being who experiences joy and experiences pain. And as a living being, I deserve to feel love. I deserve to feel joy. And I don't have to earn it. It's like when a child is born, you don't sort of pick it up and go, well, I don't know. Do you really deserve love? Should I love you? No, I mean, you spontaneously take care of that child because it's this vulnerable being that needs love and needs you. And the same is true of us. We are each vulnerable beings, even as adults. We're still emotionally and frankly, physically vulnerable, and we need care. So this is why I like the word care rather than love, because love is kind of a feeling, and there can be a kind of judgment. Should I love this? But care to me is more about, well, I rest myself when I'm tired. I take food when I'm hungry. If I feel emotionally or spiritually bereft, I seek out teachings or support or community. So I just take care of myself. I might not have great thoughts about myself. I mean, we all know our own secrets and our own failings. And so, yeah, that's not the point. Actually, if you're a person who, feels bad about yourself, you need even more love. How's that? Oh, in fact, that's when I'm feeling sad or even regretful, having done something, said the wrong thing to someone. When I feel that, I try to bring an attitude of compassion toward myself. So there is this way in which we have to kind of step away from ourselves as us. It's hard to even, put that into words, but to step away and see ourselves as just a person who is suffering and see ourselves as another human being. And so there's this critical idea of realizing, that all human beings are flawed. It's not that we're measuring ourselves against some saintly ideal that we're encountering. I mean, that's not to say there aren't some saintly people, but for ordinary human beings, we all do things unskillfully. We all hurt other people. We all make mistakes, and many of us make serious mistakes. I mean, I identify as a recovering alcoholic and addict. And so, I've got a history, there's plenty of stories I can point to, but it's human. I mean, it's one of the advantages of going to something like a 12-step program where you see, 50 other people in a room who've done things like you've done. And you realize, oh, I'm not uniquely flawed. And that's what it comes down to me, is seeing I am not uniquely flawed and I need care. That's kind of where I start from. Not always easy, for sure. There's that self-judgment tends to sneak in. But this is why mindfulness is really important in the loving kindness meditation, because you have to be mindful of the negativity that's coming in and try to let go of that and turn towards this more positive or at least neutral attitude of kindness to yourself.
And when we practice that mindfulness, that negativity that comes up and we notice it, it's something that as we continue our mindfulness practice over time, that tends to dissipate a little bit?
It does, but I don't think that's a way you want to think about it to start with, because the risk when we start to be mindful, and this certainly comes hand in hand with trying to do loving kindness, the risk is that when something difficult shows up or something negative shows up, some resistance, that we think we have to get rid of it and that we're immediately in conflict with it. And as soon as we're in conflict with something in our own mind, we're trapped, because there's no way out of that. The only way out of that is to let go, or I would even prefer to accept what is there is just what's there, and it's okay. I can allow it to be there, rather than I'm just, for example, I sit down, I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to do loving kindness and start with myself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. Oh man, I shouldn't have said that to my friend the other day. Man, that was really stupid. What is wrong with me? Oh, wait, I'm judging myself. Okay. Yeah. And that feels bad. Oh man, I'm judging myself. Why am I judging myself? Oh, wait a minute. And you start to see how your mind goes into these loops. So the only way to me to stop that is to say, okay, hold on. mindfulness says, this is what is happening. There's this thought. It also says, if I get any conflict with it, I'm creating another thought, another level of resistance. So can I just breathe with, oh, I did this unskillful thing. Okay, I didn't want to hurt that person. Let me breathe. Okay, I can feel what that feels like. That's okay. And I guess okay is kind of a key word for me. It's like, yeah, everybody does this. So there's sort of this background for me, which is, yeah, that's okay. That's a human mistake. And I can call my friend and apologize. So for now that I'm meditating and I'm not on my phone calling my friend, what I'm going to do is I'm going to breathe with that feeling and I'm going to come back. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. Oh, yeah. Okay. I can do that. So there's this kind of, movement between the awareness of what is arising and the cultivation of the positive quality. But if you're trying to force away the unpleasant or force in, grab onto the pleasant, then you're creating a tension and an efforting that's actually more of a struggle. So all of this has to be approached with a gentleness, with an acceptance, with an attitude of compassion and kindness and really wisdom, this broader wisdom of this is life. I'm watching the human mind play out right in front of me. And notice I say the human mind rather than my mind, because my mind is really no different in its behavior from anyone else.
Well, and I think it's very encouraging to hear that because, I mean, my goodness, you're, a teacher of this. And so when we look at, even teachers have tough times, as someone that's maybe starting off today and they want to say, okay, well, I've picked up living kindness. I'm starting my practice to be more in control of not only my mind, but also to develop more compassion and care. I think it gives them a lot of encouragement to hear, well, it's a journey. It's not, a quick thing.
Yeah. There's that expression one day at a time. And I was thinking about this expression the other day, how, in the 12-step programs, that means you only have to not drink or whatever, do your addiction today. But it occurred to me that it also means I have to engage in my spiritual practice today. I can't put it off. And there's no day when I can take the day off. I mean, I don't know. When I hear from teachers who only project sort of ideals, it kind of makes me feel less than in a way. So I think one of my goals as a teacher was to always try to be human and real with people and honest. It's different approaches, but yeah, I don't really buy that a lot of, just because you teach people how to meditate, that you don't have problems, or that you never get angry or, you're never sad. I don't know who that is. I mean, I know some very, some people who have been monks for 40 and 50 years, and they seem very human to me. They don't seem like they're up on a pedestal. And I think we're the ones, who put people up on the pedestals. And what we do when we do that is we, again, kind of create suffering for ourselves. Oh, those people, those teachers, they're so spiritual and they're so special. And I could never be like that. And again, we're in this comparing mode, rather than realizing, they're just human beings. I mean, when they're up teaching, then they are trying to teach these ideals and convey these beautiful visions. But do you think when they go home and, they're hanging out with their family, that they don't still have, tension or conflicts in their life? And that's just not really realistic. I mean, it's something that, I do spend time with some of my monastic teachers. And one of the things they talk about, you hear them talk about, is all the conflicts that go on in the monastery between the different monks, and how monks will be like, "Oh, I want to move to a different monastery. These monks are annoying," and you go, "Oh, that's great! Like, you're a professional spiritual person, and even you are getting irritated with people." Yeah, that's life.
I love that. It is life. It's what we all kind of go through. It's, being able to be in community in ways that we can, it's not tolerate, but be able to lift one another up, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what is it that we have to do? There's a great line that I use in this book, in Living Kindness, about these monks who are living together. And this comes out of the early Buddhist texts. And one of the monks says, he's asked by the Buddha, how are you monks getting along? And he says, well, we get along because I think to myself, why not put aside what I wish to do and do what these fellow monks wish to do? Well, that's a perfect guideline for living in community. Why not put aside what I wish to do and do what these fellows wish to do? And then he says, I think to myself, we are different in body, but one in mind. And that's exactly what I'm getting at. Different in body. Of course, we are all different, but we all have human minds, which have shared qualities. There's distinctions and personalities, but at the core, and this is what I think a lot of Buddhism is about, the core is these basic human qualities that we all share and that we all have to negotiate and live with.
Well, and in your book, you talk about metta as a practice of openness and non-separation. Is that what you're kind of leading to, is how we are all connected in many ways?
It's at the heart of it, isn't it? That is seeing that connection. Because why should I worry about loving everybody? When you realize that you are connected, and beyond just humanity, but with the earth, with nature, seeing those connections. I mean, there's a lot of benefit and wisdom that comes out of it. Certainly in terms of, creating peace in a home, in a community, in a country, recognizing our interconnection is vital. When we think of ourselves as all unique individuals, each one struggling for their own survival with a zero-sum game, it's just constant conflict. And that's, of course, a lot of the history of the planet and history of, relationships, But when we can see that that's really a misapprehension, a misunderstanding, that's not true. We are so interconnected. I mean, I'm sitting here in a chair that I didn't make, speaking into a microphone that I don't know how it's made, looking at a computer that's way beyond my capacity. I'm dependent upon all the people that created those things. And I'm dependent upon, the earth that grows the food that I ate for breakfast, and, the sky and the rain, and, we're all interdependent. And when we can see that connection, then we bring a whole different attitude to our life and into our relationships and to everything we do.
I think that really kind of drives things home for a lot of us, and how this connection's so important. And for us, in many ways, it kind of makes me think, if I have a problem with my neighbor, that's really the problem I'm having with myself.
Yeah. I mean, that's the starting point, certainly. To me, so there's a process in terms of conflict, particularly, whereby I need to first start and look at myself and how the feeling I have is generated within me. And so I have to deal with that feeling myself. No matter what happens with my neighbor, I've still got that feeling. They're not actually causing it even though that's what my head tells me, right? So I see that, and then I can notice my impulsive reaction and let go of that, so that I don't act out on some anger or resentment, but take some time then to reflect on, okay, what is actually going on? Is there something that needs to be addressed? Because anger is not always irrational. Usually it has some rational basis. So you look at, what's triggering this? Oh, well, when they did this, that kind of hit me like that. And, can I address that? So then if we have this approach of being more careful and leading with kindness, we can then address conflicts in constructive ways. It's not that we just go, there's anger, just let it go and forget about it. No, because if there's some real world situation that needs to be addressed, we want to address it, but we want to address it in a way that's constructive, that isn't going to inflame the situation and create more conflict by blaming, by anger and rage, but rather by addressing, when you said this, I felt that. Can we talk about that? Or when you did this, I thought it was harmful. And can we talk about that? How can we work through that? But if we get carried away with our anger, there's never that opportunity to actually make constructive change. So that's where the practice of loving kindness and the practice of mindfulness and compassion gives us a foundation for then an internal foundation that then allows us to operate externally in constructive ways rather than destructive ways.
And boy, can we use that right now. So,
Yeah.
I think humanity as a whole. What do you want readers and our listeners to take away from living kindness?
I think primarily what I want them to take away is the idea that they can bring a more caring mind state and behavior into their lives without becoming some kind of saintly person, that this is possible, that we can really make some fairly simple changes in how we view things to really improve the harmony in our lives. And so I think those are the things that I'm trying to point to in this book. Some of the pretty accessible ways of becoming, more peaceful and compassionate and loving in our lives.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
I really appreciate the conversation, Marianne. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Living Kindness, Metta Practice for the Whole of Our Lives. Living Kindness is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And you can also purchase this book from the publisher, Shambhala Publications, at shambhala.com. If you'd like to reach out to Kevin and learn more about his book and his teachings, you can visit kevingriffin.net. Well, we're going to pause here for a quick moment, and we'll be right back after this message. I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we Make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.